The sound of my combine harvester roaring to life at 6 in the morning was music to my ears, but apparently to Margaret Patterson, president of the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association. It was a declaration of war. I am Yancy Norwood, and I have been farming the same 200 acres in rural Nebraska just outside of Lincoln for the past 15 years. My property sits right on the edge of what used to be pure farmland until about 5 years ago when developers bought up some adjacent parcels and built Meadowbrook Hills, a cookie-cutter subdivision of identical beige houses with manicured lawns and residents who thought corn grew in cans at the grocery store. When I bought this land, it was zoned agricultural, and it still is. The subdivision went up knowing full well they were building next to a working farm, but that did not stop them from complaining about every single aspect of rural life from day one. The wheat was ready, golden and perfect, swaying in the early September breeze. I had checked the moisture levels the day before and knew I had maybe a 3-day window before rain rolled in. Any farmer worth his salt knows you do not waste time during harvest. You get up before dawn, you run your equipment until dark, and you pray nothing breaks down. That is exactly what I was doing when I saw Margaret's silver Lexus come tearing down my dirt driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on her pristine paint job. I was in the cab of my John Deere S780, about to head out to the north field, when she jumped out of her car wearing white capri pants and a pink polo shirt, her blonde hair sprayed into submission despite the wind. She was waving her arms like she was trying to flag down a rescue helicopter. I killed the engine and climbed down, already knowing this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. "Yancy Norwood, what on earth do you think you are doing?" she shrieked before I even had both feet on the ground. "Good morning, Margaret. I am harvesting my wheat." "Same thing I do every September," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I had dealt with Margaret enough times over the years to know that getting angry only made things worse. At 6 in the morning, that noise is completely unacceptable. You woke up half the neighborhood. "My husband could not even hear his conference call for Japan because of your racket," she said, jabbing her finger toward me like a weapon. "Your neighborhood is a quarter-mile away, Margaret, and I am allowed to operate farm equipment during daylight hours." "Been doing it long before your houses were even built," I replied. "I do not care. The HOA has rules about noise disturbances, and you are clearly in violation," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "I am not part of your HOA, Margaret. My property is agricultural land." "Your rules do not apply to me," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "We will see about that. I am calling the police," she said, pulling out her phone. "You do that. I have got wheat to harvest," I said, turning back toward my combine. I heard her behind me, speaking in that overly sweet voice she used when she wanted something. "Yes, hello. I need to report a noise disturbance. My neighbor is running extremely loud machinery and it is disrupting our entire community. Yes, 4782 County Road 15. Please send someone right away." I shook my head and climbed back into the cab. I had talked to the county sheriff enough times about various HOA complaints that they knew the situation. Sure enough, as I was making my second pass through the field about an hour later, I saw a patrol car pull up to the edge of the field. I finished my row and drove the combine over, shutting it down as Deputy Sheriff Tom Richardson got out of his vehicle. Tom and I went to high school together. He knew farming, knew the law, and knew Margaret was a pain in everyone's backside. He was grinning as I climbed down. "Let me guess," Margaret called, I said. "Oh yeah. Third complaint this week from that subdivision. Last time it was about your rooster crowing too early. Before that it was about the smell from your cattle," Tom said, shaking his head. "I do not even have cattle anymore." Sold them 2 years ago, I said. I tried to tell her that. She insisted she smelled cow manure, Tom said. So what can I do for you, deputy? I asked, wiping the sweat from my forehead. Well, officially I have to respond to the complaint and talk to you about the noise. Unofficially, I am here to tell you that you are not doing anything wrong. It is harvest season. You are on your own agricultural property, operating during legal hours and doing what farmers have done here for over 100 years. Tell Margaret if she has a problem with farm noise, she should not have bought a house next to a farm, Tom said. You tell her that, I asked. In slightly more professional terms, yes. She was not happy. Started going on about property values and quality of life, and how the HOA was going to take legal action, Tom said. Let her try. My lawyer already reviewed everything when they first started complaining 2 years ago. I am completely within my rights, I said. I know you are. Just wanted to show face so she could not say we ignored her complaint. You need anything? Tom asked. Just for Margaret to leave me alone long enough to get my harvest in, I said. Good luck with that. I will let her know I spoke with you and explained that farming operations are exempt from HOA noise ordinances. Maybe that will calm her down, Tom said, though neither of us believed it. Tom left and I got back to work. The wheat was yielding well, better than last year, and I wanted to keep moving while conditions were good. I worked until the sun started setting, grabbed a quick dinner of leftover meatloaf and collapsed into bed. Tomorrow would be another long day, but Margaret was not done, not by a long shot. The next morning I was up at 5:30, checking over the combine and getting ready to head back out. I wanted to finish the north field and start on the west 40. As I was greasing the header, I heard vehicles coming down my driveway. Multiple vehicles. I walked around the barn to see Margaret's Lexus, followed by 2 other cars I recognized from the subdivision. Behind the wheel of a black BMW was Patricia Montgomery, the HOA vice president, and in a white Mercedes SUV was Susan Fletcher, the HOA treasurer. The 3 of them got out and marched toward me like they were the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse, if the apocalypse was brought about by middle-aged women with too much time and entitlement on their hands. Yancy, we need to talk, Margaret said. The other 2 women flanked her, arms crossed identically. I've got work to do, ladies. What is this about? I asked, though I knew exactly what it was about. The police were absolutely no help yesterday. They clearly do not understand the severity of this situation. The noise from your equipment is intolerable, and it is negatively impacting the quality of life for every resident of Meadowbrook Hills, Margaret said. It is harvest season. I explained this yesterday. I will be running equipment from dawn until dusk for the next week or so, and then it will be quiet again until spring planting, I said. That is completely unacceptable. We have drafted a formal cease and desist letter, and if you do not comply, the HOA will be forced to take legal action, Patricia said, pulling a folded document from her designer handbag. I took the letter and scanned it quickly. It was full of legal-sounding language that basically demanded I stop all farming operations immediately or face a lawsuit for creating a nuisance. It cited HOA bylaws, none of which applied to my property, and made vague threats about injunctions and damages. This is not worth the paper it is printed on. You have no jurisdiction over my land. I am not part of your HOA. My property is zoned agricultural and has been for decades. You cannot just decide that farming is a nuisance because you do not like the noise, I said, handing the letter back to her. Our attorney disagrees. We have already filed a complaint with the county. You will be hearing from them soon, Susan said. File all the complaints you want. I am not breaking any laws, and I am not stopping my harvest because you three decided farmland should be silent, I said, my patience wearing thin. You are being incredibly unreasonable, Margaret said, her face flushing red. No, Margaret, you are being unreasonable. You bought houses next to a working farm, a farm that was here long before your subdivision. When you signed your closing papers, there was a disclosure about agricultural operations in the area. You were warned. You chose to ignore it because you liked the view of the fields. Well, those pretty fields require work, and work means noise. That is reality, I said. How dare you speak to us that way? We are trying to protect our community, Patricia said. From what? Food production. Do you even understand where your food comes from? I asked. Do not be condescending. We are not idiots, Susan said. Then stop acting like it. I've got 200 acres of wheat that need to come off before it rains, and I am losing daylight arguing with you three. Please leave my property, I said. We are not finished, Margaret started, but I cut her off. Yes, you are. This is private property, and I am asking you to leave. Right now, I said firmly. They exchanged glances, clearly not used to being dismissed. Finally, Margaret huffed, spun on her heel, and marched back to her Lexus. The other two followed. I watched them drive away in a cloud of dust and anger before getting back to work. I called my lawyer, Robert Jenkins, as soon as I got back to the house that evening. Robert had handled the initial consultation when the HOA first started making noise about my operations 2 years ago. He was a straight shooter, a farm kid himself from down near Omaha, and he understood rural law. Yancy, good to hear from you. What has Margaret done now? He asked after I explained the situation. So they have got no case, right? I asked. Not even close. Agricultural exemptions in Nebraska are pretty ironclad, especially for established operations like yours. The county is not going to do anything because you are not violating any ordinances. If they try to file suit, it will get thrown out in about 5 minutes. These HOA types love to throw around legal threats, but they rarely follow through once they realize how much it is going to cost them, Robert said. What should I do? I asked. Keep doing what you are doing. Document everything. If they come back, take pictures, record conversations if Nebraska's one-party consent law allows, which it does. If they file suit, call me immediately and we will shut it down. But honestly, I doubt it will go that far. Most likely they will huff and puff and eventually realize they are wasting everyone's time, Robert said. I hope you are right, I said. I am right. Now go get your harvest in. That is what matters, he said. The next 3 days passed without incident, which should have made me suspicious. I managed to finish the north field and get halfway through the west 40. The wheat was coming off clean and the moisture was good. Everything was going exactly as it should. Then on the 4th morning, I woke up to find that someone had spray painted "Stop the Noise" in bright red letters across the side of my barn. I stood there staring at the vandalism, fury building in my chest. This was beyond annoying complaints and empty legal threats. This was destruction of property. I took several pictures from different angles, then called the sheriff's office. Tom arrived within 30 minutes, along with another deputy I did not recognize. They walked the property line looking for evidence, took their own photos, and dusted for prints on a spray paint can I found discarded in the weeds nearby. Any idea who did this? Tom asked, though we both knew. I've got suspicions but no proof, I said carefully. Let me guess, starts with M and ends with R. Garrett, Tom said. I am not saying that. Could have been any of them from that subdivision. Could have been kids. I do not know, I said. You have security cameras, Tom asked. Not on the barn. Just on the house and the equipment shed. Been meaning to expand coverage but kept putting it off, I said, kicking myself for that oversight. Might be a good time to do that. I will write this up as vandalism and criminal mischief. If we find prints on the can, we will follow up. In the meantime, keep your eyes open. If this escalates, call us immediately, Tom said. After the deputies left, I spent an hour scrubbing at the paint. Most of it came off, but the wood was stained. I would have to repaint the whole side eventually. I was angry, frustrated, and tired. All I wanted to do was harvest my crop in peace. That afternoon, while I was out in the field, I saw a car pull up to the edge of the property. I finished my row and headed over, expecting more complaints. But it was not someone from the HOA. It was a man about my age, maybe early 40s, wearing jeans and a plaid shirt. He waved as I approached. "You Yancy Norwood?" he asked as I climbed down. "That is me. What can I do for you?" I asked warily. "Name is Dale Harper. I live about 2 miles down the road, other side of that subdivision. Heard about your trouble with the HOA and wanted to let you know you are not alone," he said, extending his hand. I shook it, relieved to have someone on my side for once. "Yeah, they have been a real pain. Vandalized my barn last night." "I heard about that too. Small community, word travels." "Look, there are about 15 farming families in this area, and we have all had problems with Meadowbrook Hills since they went up. Nothing as bad as what you are dealing with, but complaints about smells, noise, dust, you name it. We have been talking and we want to help if this goes any further," Dale said. "I appreciate that. My lawyer says I am in the right, but it is good to know I have support," I said. "More than you know. These city people move out here thinking they are going to get peace and quiet and pretty views, but they do not want to deal with what comes with rural living. They want the aesthetic without the reality." "Well, we were here first and we are not going anywhere," Dale said firmly. "Amen to that," I said. "You need anything, help with harvest, someone to keep an eye on your property, whatever you call me," Dale said, handing me a business card with his phone number. We talked for a few more minutes about crops and weather and mutual acquaintances before he left. His visit boosted my spirits considerably. It was easy to feel isolated when dealing with people like Margaret, but knowing I had neighbors who understood and supported me made all the difference. I worked until dark, made good progress, and was feeling optimistic about finishing the west field by the end of the week. Then I went home, heated up some soup, and crashed on the couch with the news on. My phone rang around 9. It was Robert, my lawyer. "Yancy, heads up. I just got an email from an attorney representing the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. They are actually filing suit," he said. "You have got to be kidding me," I groaned. "Wish I was." "They are claiming you are operating a nuisance, seeking an injunction to stop your farming operations, and demanding financial compensation for decreased property values. It is completely frivolous, but we are going to have to respond," Robert said. "How much is this going to cost me?" I asked. "Do not worry about that right now. I am confident we can get this dismissed quickly. I will file a motion to dismiss based on agricultural exemptions. Might not even make it to a hearing, but you need to be prepared for them to play dirty. People like this do not like being told no," Robert said. "They already vandalized my barn," I said. "Document everything. Every interaction, every incident, every complaint. It will help our case if we need to file a countersuit for harassment," Robert said. After we hung up, I sat in the dark feeling the weight of it all. I just wanted to farm my land. That was it. I was not hurting anyone, not breaking any laws, just trying to make a living the same way my family had done for generations. And now, I was being sued because some entitled suburbanites did not like the sound of a combine. The next morning I was up early again, determined not to let the lawsuit slow me down. The harvest was not going to wait for legal proceedings. I was greasing the header when I heard someone calling my name. I looked up to see a news van pulling into my driveway. A young woman with a microphone and a cameraman followed behind her. Yancy Norwood. I am Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We heard about the dispute between you and the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. Would you be willing to give us a statement? She asked. How did you hear about this? I asked, surprised. Public court filings. Plus we got a tip from someone in the HOA. They are claiming you are harassing the neighborhood with excessive noise and refusing to be a good neighbor. We wanted to hear your side, she said. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to keep my head down and let my lawyer handle everything. But another part of me was tired of being painted as the bad guy when I was just trying to do my job. All right, I will talk to you, but I need to be clear about a few things, I said. The cameraman set up, and Jennifer positioned herself next to me with the wheat fields in the background. She asked me to explain the situation, and I did, calmly and factually. I explained that I had been farming this land for 15 years, that it was zoned agricultural, that I was operating during legal hours, and that the subdivision was built knowing full well there was a working farm adjacent to it. The HOA says your noise is disrupting their quality of life. What do you say to that? Jennifer asked. I say it is harvest season. This is what farms do. If you move next to a farm, you are going to hear farm equipment. That is not harassment, that is agriculture. I am not doing anything wrong or illegal. I am just trying to get my crop in before the weather turns, I said. They are suing you. Are you concerned? She asked. My lawyer is confident the suit has no merit. Agricultural operations have strong legal protections in Nebraska. But yes, I am concerned that I have to spend time and money defending myself against frivolous lawsuits instead of focusing on my work, I said. What would you say to the HOA if they were watching this? She asked. I looked directly at the camera. I would say that we all have to share this land. I respect your right to live in your subdivision and enjoy your homes. All I ask is that you respect my right to farm land that has been farmed for generations. We can coexist peacefully if everyone is reasonable, but I am not going to stop farming because you do not like the noise. Jennifer thanked me for my time and they packed up and left. I had no idea if anything I said would make a difference, but at least my side of the story would be out there. That evening, the segment aired on the local news. Dale called me right after it ran. Yancy, you crushed it. You came across as completely reasonable, saw the whole thing. Think it will help? I asked. Cannot hurt. Public opinion matters, especially in a small community like this. I bet you get a lot of support, he said. He was right. Over the next 2 days, I received calls and visits from neighbors I barely knew, people from church, even folks from town who stopped by to say they were on my side. Someone dropped off a casserole. Another person brought over a case of beer. It was overwhelming in the best way. But if I thought the news segment would make Margaret back down, I was very wrong. If anything, it made her double down. 2 days after the segment aired, I was in the field when I saw not 1 but 3 police cars pull up. My heart sank. I drove the combine over and shut it down, climbing down to meet Tom and 2 state troopers I did not recognize. Yancy, we got a problem, Tom said, looking uncomfortable. What now? I asked. Margaret Patterson called in a complaint saying you threatened her on television. She is claiming you made her fear for her safety with your statements about not stopping farming, Tom said. You have got to be kidding me. I never threatened anyone. Did you watch the segment? I asked. I did. I know you did not threaten her. But she filed a formal complaint and we have to investigate. These troopers are here because she claimed we have a conflict of interest since you and I know each other. Tom said, apologetic. The taller of the 2 state troopers stepped forward. Mr. Norwood, I am Trooper Davidson and this is Trooper Mills. We need to ask you some questions about your interactions with Mrs. Patterson. I spent the next 30 minutes answering questions, explaining the entire situation from the beginning. I showed them the vandalism on my barn, told them about the cease and desist letter, described every interaction I had had with Margaret and the other HOA members. The troopers took notes and remained professionally neutral. Mr. Norwood, based on what you have told us and what we have observed, I do not see any evidence that you have threatened or harassed anyone. Mrs. Patterson's complaint does not appear to have merit. However, I would advise you to avoid any direct contact with her if possible. Let your lawyer handle communications, Trooper Davidson said. That is exactly what I want to do. All I want is to be left alone to farm my land, I said. After they left, I called Robert and filled him in. He was livid. This is escalating into harassment on their part. They are filing false police reports, vandalizing your property, and now trying to paint you as threatening. We need to be proactive here, Robert said. What do you want to do? I asked. I am going to file a motion for a restraining order against Margaret Patterson and the other HOA board members. We will cite the vandalism, the false police reports, and the harassment. We are also going to file a countersuit for damages and legal fees. These people need to understand that their actions have consequences, Robert said. Will that make things worse? I asked. It might make things heated in the short term, but it will protect you in the long term. Right now, they think they can push you around. We need to show them they are wrong, Robert said. I agreed and Robert got to work. The next few days were tense. I finished the west field and started on the south parcel, working longer hours to try to stay ahead of the forecasted rain. Every time a car drove by, I tensed up, wondering if it was Margaret coming to complain or worse. I installed security cameras around the entire property, expensive but necessary. Then one morning I woke up to my phone blowing up with notifications. I grabbed it groggily and saw dozens of messages and missed calls. I called Dale first since he had called 3 times. Yancy, turn on the news, he said as soon as he answered. I stumbled to the living room and turned on the TV. Channel 7 was running a follow-up story on the dispute, but this time it was not flattering to me. Margaret was on screen, tears streaming down her face, talking about how afraid she was, how I had made threatening statements, how the noise from my farm was giving her headaches and anxiety. Patricia and Susan flanked her, nodding solemnly. This man has no regard for anyone but himself. He is making our lives miserable, and when we tried to address it reasonably, he went on television and basically told us he does not care how much we suffer. We just want peace in our own homes. Is that too much to ask? Margaret sobbed. The reporter, a different one this time, asked about the lawsuit. Margaret dabbed at her eyes and said, We did not want it to come to this, but he left us no choice. Our property values are plummeting. People are scared. Children cannot play outside because of the noise. It is a nightmare. I stared at the TV in disbelief. She was lying, outright lying. Children could not play outside because of the noise. That was absurd. The subdivision was far enough away that the noise was barely noticeable and only during harvest. This was a calculated PR move to paint me as the villain. My phone rang. It was Robert. You watching this? Unfortunately, yes, I said. Okay, do not panic. This is actually good for us, Robert said. How is this good? I asked. Because she is making specific claims that we can disprove. Property values plummeting. We can get real estate data that shows that is false. Children cannot play outside. We can demonstrate that the noise levels at the subdivision are well within legal limits. She is lying on television and we can prove it. "This is going to backfire on her spectacularly," Robert said. "I hope you are right because right now I look like a monster," I said. "Trust me. I am already drafting a response. We are going to demand a retraction, and we are going to provide evidence to the media that contradicts everything she said. By the time we are done, she is going to regret going on TV," Robert said. Robert was true to his word. By that afternoon, he had compiled a comprehensive package of information, including noise studies showing that my equipment was well within legal decibel limits at the subdivision boundary, real estate data showing property values in Meadowbrook Hills had actually increased over the past year, and affidavits from other neighbors stating that the noise was minimal and only during harvest season. He sent it to every news outlet in the area, along with a formal demand for a retraction. 2 days later, Channel 7 ran a correction. They reported that independent noise measurements showed my farming operations were within legal limits and that property value data did not support the HOA's claims. It was not as dramatic as Margaret's tearful interview, but it was something. More importantly, the court date for the motion to dismiss the HOA's lawsuit was set. Robert was confident but warned me that nothing was guaranteed. We needed to be prepared for anything. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in early October. By then, I had finished my harvest, thank God, so I did not have to worry about losing time in the field. I put on my best suit, which I only wore to weddings and funerals, and met Robert at the Lancaster County Courthouse in downtown Lincoln. Margaret was there with her attorney, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit. Patricia and Susan sat in the gallery behind them. On my side was Robert and me, along with Dale and 3 other farmers who had come to show support. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Patricia Hendricks, called the case and asked both sides to present their arguments. The HOA's attorney went first, arguing that my farming operations constituted a nuisance, that the noise was excessive and unreasonable, and that the HOA had a right to protect the quality of life for its residents. Then Robert stood up. He methodically demolished every argument. He presented the agricultural exemption statutes, cited case law showing that established farming operations have strong protections against nuisance claims, provided the noise studies showing my operations were legal, and pointed out that the subdivision was built with full knowledge of the adjacent farmland. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs bought homes next to a working farm and are now upset that the farm operates like a farm. This lawsuit is not about protecting anyone's rights. It is about a homeowners association trying to bully a farmer into stopping legal agricultural operations because they find it inconvenient. Nebraska law is very clear on this matter. Agricultural operations on properly zoned land are not nuisances. The plaintiffs have no case, and this lawsuit should be dismissed with prejudice," Robert concluded. Judge Hendricks did not take long to decide. She looked at the HOA's attorney and said, "Counselor, your clients were provided with agricultural disclosure statements when they purchased their properties, correct?" "Well, yes, Your Honor, but—" he started. "And Mr. Norwood's property is zoned agricultural and has been for decades, correct?" she continued. "Yes, but the noise levels," he tried again, "are within legal limits according to the evidence presented. Counselor, this lawsuit is frivolous. Agricultural operations are explicitly exempt from nuisance claims under Nebraska Revised Statute 54-1903. Your clients have no standing. Case dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am awarding attorney's fees and costs to the defendant." The plaintiffs brought this action despite clear legal precedent to the contrary. "They wasted this court's time and the defendant's resources," Judge Hendricks said firmly. I heard Margaret gasp behind me. Robert leaned over and whispered, "That means the HOA has to pay your legal fees." She is not happy. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught Margaret's eye. She looked furious, her face red and her mouth set in a tight line. I did not gloat or say anything. I just walked past and out into the hallway. Dale clapped me on the back. "You won, man. This is great." "It is over," I said, relief washing over me. But it was not over. Not yet. 2 days after the court hearing, I was working on some repairs in the barn when Tom drove up with Trooper Davidson. I walked out to meet them, concerned by the serious looks on their faces. "Yancy, we need to talk to you about something," Tom said. "What is going on?" I asked. "When we investigated the vandalism on your barn, we sent the spray paint can off for fingerprints. We got a match," Trooper Davidson said. "Who was it?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. "Margaret Patterson's husband, Gerald. His prints were on file from a background check for his job in finance. He is the one who spray painted your barn," Tom said. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Dead serious. We are here to let you know that we are filing charges, criminal mischief and vandalism. He will be arrested and arraigned. We wanted to give you a heads up in case there is any blowback," Trooper Davidson said. "Does Margaret know?" I asked. "Not yet. We are heading there next," Tom said. Part of me felt vindicated. They had vandalized my property and now there would be consequences. But another part of me just felt tired. All of this over harvest noise. It was insane. "Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate everything you have done," I said. After they left, I called Robert and filled him in. He was pleased, but cautioned me again to avoid any contact with the Pattersons or the HOA. The arrest made local news. Gerald Patterson, respected financial advisor and husband of HOA president, arrested for vandalizing a neighbor's barn. The story detailed the ongoing dispute and made it clear that the vandalism was retaliatory. Public opinion, which had been somewhat divided, swung heavily in my favor. Margaret must have been mortified. Her husband was facing criminal charges. The HOA had lost its lawsuit and owed me thousands in legal fees, and their reputation in the community was in tatters. A normal person would have cut their losses and moved on. But Margaret Patterson was not a normal person. A week after Gerald's arrest, I received a certified letter from the HOA. I opened it expecting another legal threat, but it was something different. It was a letter informing me that the HOA was claiming I owed them for damage to shared resources, including road maintenance on the county road that ran past both my property and the subdivision. It was pure nonsense. County roads are maintained by the county, not HOAs, and I already paid property taxes that covered that maintenance. I forwarded the letter to Robert with a note saying, "They will not stop." Robert called me within an hour. "Yancy, this is getting into harassment territory. They are throwing everything at the wall hoping something sticks. I think we need to file a restraining order and a harassment lawsuit. We have more than enough evidence." "Do it," I said. I was done playing defense. Robert filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Margaret Patterson, Gerald Patterson, Patricia Montgomery, and Susan Fletcher, both individually and as representatives of the HOA. The suit claimed harassment, defamation, and abuse of process. We asked for damages, a restraining order preventing them from contacting me or coming onto my property, and a court order forcing them to stop filing frivolous complaints with law enforcement and government agencies. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for late October. In the meantime, I tried to get back to normal life. The harvest was done, the equipment was winterized, and I was working on fall field prep. It felt good to focus on farming instead of lawsuits. The night before the hearing, Dale called me. "Yancy, you need to see this." "See what?" I asked. Check the Meadowbrook Hills Facebook page. Margaret is losing it, he said. I did not use Facebook much, but I pulled it up and searched for the Meadowbrook Hills community page. What I saw was shocking. Margaret had posted a long, rambling screed about me, calling me a bully, a menace, and a threat to the community. She accused me of trying to destroy the subdivision, of being vindictive and cruel, and of using my connections with law enforcement to persecute her family. The post had dozens of comments, most of them disagreeing with her, but a few supporters chimed in with their own complaints about farm noise and smells. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Robert. He added them to our evidence file. The restraining order hearing was in front of the same judge, Judge Hendricks. Both sides presented their cases. Robert laid out the entire timeline of events. The initial noise complaints, the escalation to vandalism, the frivolous lawsuit, the false police reports, the defamatory TV interview, and now the continued harassment via certified letters and social media posts. He presented evidence for each claim and argued that my safety and livelihood were being threatened by the defendant's obsessive targeting. The HOA's attorney tried to argue that Margaret and the others were simply exercising their rights to address concerns about property values and quality of life. But Judge Hendricks was not having it. Counsel, your clients have repeatedly and deliberately harassed Mr. Norwood. They vandalized his property, filed a frivolous lawsuit that I already dismissed, made false statements to law enforcement, defamed him on television and social media, and continue to contact him with baseless demands. This is textbook harassment. I am granting the restraining order. The defendants are prohibited from contacting Mr. Norwood directly or indirectly, from entering his property, and from filing any further complaints or legal actions without first obtaining leave of this court. Any violation will result in contempt charges. Do I make myself clear? Judge Hendricks said sternly. Yes, Your Honor, the HOA's attorney mumbled. As for the harassment lawsuit, that will proceed to trial. Discovery will begin immediately. Court is adjourned, Judge Hendricks said, banging her gavel. I walked out of the courthouse feeling like a weight had been lifted. Margaret could not bother me anymore. The restraining order had teeth, and she would face real consequences if she violated it. Over the next few months, life slowly returned to normal. Fall turned to winter. I worked on equipment maintenance, planned next year's crops, and enjoyed the quiet. Margaret and the others complied with the restraining order. I did not hear from them at all. The harassment lawsuit moved through the legal system. Discovery revealed some interesting things. Email exchanges between Margaret, Patricia, and Susan showed they had coordinated their efforts to drive me out, discussing strategies to make my life difficult, and hoping I would eventually give up and sell my land. Gerald's involvement in the vandalism had been at Margaret's urging, according to his statement to police. She had worked him up into a frenzy about how I was destroying their lives, and he had acted out. In March, Gerald Patterson pleaded guilty to criminal mischief and was sentenced to 100 hours of community service and ordered to pay restitution for the damage to my barn. He also had to issue a formal written apology, which I received in the mail. It was stiff and clearly written by a lawyer, but it was something. The civil harassment trial was scheduled for April. Robert was confident we would win, but he warned me that even if we did, collecting damages from an HOA could be complicated. 2 weeks before trial, the HOA's attorney contacted Robert with a settlement offer. They agreed to pay me $50,000 in damages, issue a formal public apology, and add a provision to their HOA bylaws acknowledging the adjacent agricultural operations and prohibiting any future complaints or legal actions related to normal farming activities. In exchange, I would agree to drop the lawsuit. Robert called me to discuss it. "Yancy, this is a good offer. 50,000 covers your legal fees and then some, and you get a formal acknowledgement that they were wrong. More importantly, the bylaw change protects you going forward. Any future residents of that subdivision will know upfront that there is a working farm next door and they cannot complain about it." "What about Margaret and the others? Do they face any consequences?" I asked. "The public apology will be embarrassing for them. Plus, Gerald has his criminal record now, and Margaret's reputation in the community is shot. She is already facing a recall vote from other HOA members who are furious about the legal bills she racked up. I think justice has been served, even if it is not perfect," Robert said. I thought about it for a day before agreeing. The truth was, I did not want to spend more time in court. I wanted to move on. The settlement was fair and gave me the protections I needed. That was enough. The settlement was finalized in late April. The HOA issued a public statement apologizing for the harassment and acknowledging that I had been operating my farm legally and appropriately. They paid the damages and amended their bylaws as agreed. It was over. Spring planting season arrived and I was back in my fields, this time planting corn and soybeans. The weather was perfect, the soil was ready, and everything felt right. One morning while I was working, a truck pulled up to the edge of the field. I drove over, wary, but relaxed when I saw it was Dale. "Thought you might want some company," he said, holding up a thermos of coffee. We sat on the tailgate of his truck, drinking coffee and watching the clouds drift by. He told me that Margaret had been forced to resign as HOA president. The recall vote had been overwhelming. Patricia and Susan had resigned as well. The new board was much more reasonable, mostly younger families who understood they lived in a rural area and were fine with it. "You became a bit of a folk hero around here, you know," Dale said. "Standing up to the HOA, defending your right to farm. People respect that." "I just wanted to harvest my wheat," I said, shaking my head. "I know, but you stood up for all of us. Every farmer in this county who has ever dealt with complaints from people who do not understand agriculture. You fought back and you won. That matters," Dale said. I supposed he was right. The whole ordeal had been exhausting and frustrating, but in the end, the law had worked the way it was supposed to. Agricultural protections existed for a reason, and they had held up under scrutiny. My right to farm my land had been vindicated. Summer came and the crops grew tall and green. I saw people from the subdivision occasionally, usually driving past on the county road, but no one bothered me. The new HOA board sent a polite letter introducing themselves and assuring me they had no intention of interfering with my farming operations. I appreciated the gesture. In late summer, I was at the feed store in town when I ran into Jennifer Walsh, the reporter who had first covered the story. She recognized me immediately. "Yancy, hey, how are things going?" she asked. "Good. Real good, actually. Everything is settled and I can just focus on farming now," I said. "I am glad. That story really resonated with people. We got so much feedback, mostly supportive of you. It opened a lot of eyes about the challenges farmers face, especially with encroaching development," she said. "It was a mess, but maybe some good came out of it if it made people think," I said. "Definitely. Hey, would you be open to doing a follow-up story? Where are they now kind of thing?" "I think people would love to hear that you came out okay," she asked. I thought about it and agreed. A week later, she came out to the farm with her cameraman. We walked through the fields and I talked about the importance of agriculture, the legal protections that exist for farmers, and how the community had rallied around me. It was a positive story, A nice cap to the whole situation. September rolled around again, harvest season for my soybeans. I fired up the combine on a crisp morning, the sun just beginning to rise over the fields. The machine roared to life, that familiar sound that meant hard work and good crops. I glanced toward the subdivision in the distance, barely visible through the trees, and smiled. No one came to complain. No one called the police. No one vandalized my barn or filed lawsuits. I just harvested my crop in peace, the way it was supposed to be. Tom stopped by one afternoon while I was working. He got out of his patrol car and waved me over. I shut down the combine and climbed down, just checking in. "Everything good out here?" he asked. "Perfect. Quiet season," I said. "Glad to hear it." Margaret moved, by the way. She and Gerald sold their house and moved to a condo in Omaha. "No farms anywhere near them," Tom said with a grin. "Probably for the best," I said. "Probably. Anyway, I am around if you need anything." "But I do not think you will," Tom said. He was right. The rest of harvest went smoothly. The yields were good, prices were decent, and I finished up just before the first frost. I winterized the equipment, settled in for the cold months, and started planning for next year. One evening in late October, I was sitting on my porch watching the sun set over the fields. The leaves were turning gold and red, the air was cool and crisp, and everything was quiet. This was why I farmed, not for the money or the prestige, but for this. The land, the seasons, the cycle of planting and harvest. It was good, honest work, and it connected me to something bigger than myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Dale. "Bonfire at my place Friday night. All the farmers are coming. You better be there." I texted back that I would be. It would be good to see everyone, to swap stories and talk about the year's crops. These were my people, the ones who understood what it meant to work the land and fight for the right to keep doing it. Friday came and I drove over to Dale's farm. There must have been 30 people there, farmers and their families, gathered around a big bonfire with coolers of beer and platters of food. I was greeted with handshakes and pats on the back, people congratulating me again on how I had handled the HOA situation. We talked late into the night about everything and nothing. Crop prices and equipment breakdowns and whose kid was playing what sport. Normal life stuff. It felt good to be part of this community, to belong to something that mattered. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The complaints and the vandalism and the lawsuits and the stress. It had been awful at times, maddening and frustrating and unfair. But I had come through it. The law had protected my rights, my community had supported me, and in the end, justice had been served. Margaret had tried to use the HOA as a weapon to force me off my land, but she had failed. Agricultural protections existed for exactly this reason, to prevent people from being bullied out of farming by those who did not understand or appreciate it. The system had worked. More importantly, the new HOA board had learned from Margaret's mistakes. They had amended their bylaws to acknowledge the agricultural operations and educate new residents about what to expect when living near a farm. That was huge. It meant future farmers in this area would not have to fight the same battles I had fought. Winter settled in, and I focused on the things that mattered: maintaining equipment, managing finances, planning next year's crop rotation. I read farming journals and attended a conference in Des Moines about sustainable agriculture practices. Life moved forward. In January, I received a check in the mail from the HOA for the final settlement payment. I deposited it and used some of the money to buy the security system I had been putting off, some to repair the barn, and the rest went into savings. It was not about the money, but it was nice to be compensated for what they had put me through. Spring came again, and with it planting season. I was out in the fields by early April, turning over soil and preparing seed beds. The cycle began anew. Plant in spring, tend in summer, harvest in fall, rest in winter. It was a good life, a simple life in many ways, but a fulfilling one. One morning in May, I saw a moving truck pull into the subdivision. New neighbors. I wondered briefly if they would be a problem, but then I remembered the amended HOA bylaws. They would have been told upfront about the farm. They would know what to expect. And if they did not like it, they should not have bought the house. I never heard a complaint from that family or any other new residents. The new HOA board did its job, managing the subdivision without trying to control everything around it. Meadowbrook Hills and my farm coexisted peacefully, the way it should have been from the beginning. Years passed. I continued farming, dealing with the usual challenges of weather and markets and equipment failures, but never again with hostile neighbors or frivolous lawsuits. The story of my battle with the HOA became something of a local legend, told at farm gatherings, and used as a cautionary tale about HOAs overstepping their bounds. I never forgot what I had learned during that difficult year. The importance of knowing your rights, of standing up for yourself, of having a good lawyer and supportive community. I learned that people like Margaret existed, people who thought their convenience was more important than other people's livelihoods, but that the law could protect against that kind of bullying if you were willing to fight. Most of all, I learned to appreciate what I had. The land, the work, the freedom to farm without interference. Those things were not guaranteed. They had to be defended, and I had defended them successfully. As I sit here now, looking back on everything that happened, I feel grateful. Grateful for the outcome, grateful for the people who supported me, grateful for the legal protections that exist for farmers. The whole ordeal could have gone very differently. I could have been driven off my land, bankrupted by legal fees, worn down by constant harassment. But that did not happen. Instead, I am still here, still farming, still doing what I love. The combine harvester that Margaret hated so much is parked in my equipment shed right now, ready for this year's harvest. When September comes, I will fire it up again and head out to the fields, and the sound of that engine will be music to my ears. Because that sound means something. It means food on tables. It means a livelihood earned through honest work. It means connection to the land and the seasons and the rhythms of nature. It means I am exactly where I am supposed to be, doing exactly what I am supposed to do. And no HOA Karen, no matter how loud she complains or how many lawsuits she files, can take that away from me. The end of the story came not with a dramatic confrontation, but with quiet victory. The kind of victory that matters most. The victory of being able to continue living your life the way you choose, on your own land, according to your own values. That is what I fought for, and that is what I won. My farm stands today as it has for decades, a working agricultural operation in the middle of encroaching suburban development. But now, it stands with legal precedent protecting it, with community support surrounding it, and with the knowledge that farmers have rights that cannot be stripped away by entitled neighbors who think the world should bend to their preferences. Every harvest season, when I climb into that combine and fire up the engine, I think about that morning when Margaret first came screaming down my driveway. I think about Tom, the deputy, telling her it was harvest season and she needed to deal with it. I think about Judge Hendricks dismissing the lawsuit with prejudice and awarding me fees. I think about the community rallying around me and the law working the way it was supposed to. And I smile because I am still here, still farming, still making that beautiful noise that means the wheat is coming off the fields and another harvest is being brought in. That noise, the noise that Margaret hated so much, is the sound of America's heartland doing what it has done for generations. And it will continue long after all of us are gone, because the land endures and farming endures, and the right to work that land is protected by law. That is the real victory. Not just winning my case, but protecting that right for every farmer who comes after me. The HOA bylaws that were amended, the legal precedent that was set, the public awareness that was raised, all of it contributes to a better understanding of agriculture and its importance. So yes, the HOA Karen called the police on my combine harvester noise, and yes, the cops said it was harvest season and she needed to deal with it. But the story did not end there. It continued through vandalism and lawsuits and harassment and ultimately to justice. And now it ends here, with me still on my land, still farming, still doing exactly what I have always done. The fields are ready for another planting season. The equipment is maintained and prepared. The cycle continues. And I continue with it, a farmer on his land, protected by law and supported by community, living the life I chose and defending the right to keep living it. That is my story. That is how I stood up to an HOA Karen and won. That is how the system worked the way it was supposed to. And that is why, every harvest season, when I fire up that combine harvester and head out to the fields at dawn, I do so with gratitude and pride, knowing that this land is mine, this work is mine, and no one can take it away from me.